Welcome to From the Ashes, the Dungeon Crawler Network podcast all about Ashes of Creation by Intrepid Studios. Bear witness to the rebirth of the MMORPG genre from the ashes of an industry that has left the gamers behind. I am your host, Aggelos, and I am joined by one of our guild members of Hands of Fate, that's Alpha Soul. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great, man. I'm doing great.
Excellent, excellent. And also joining us in the Mighty Beard Tavern, where we're recording from, my co-GM, Stormzlord.
How you going, Egg?
Pretty awesome, man. How are you?
Oh, doing awesome. Doing awesome.
Excellent. We are back for this is actually the first episode of our quote-unquote second year of podcasting about Ashes of Creation. We are actually recording this show the night before our 1 year anniversary, which was May 3rd. On May 3rd, we released our very first interview with Stephen Sharif and the start of our podcast From the Ashes. So this is officially the first episode, because when it goes live on Monday, this will be the first episode of our second year of podcasting. So that's pretty cool. Definitely pretty cool, because I know we were the very first Ashes of Creation specific podcast to get out there, and we've been going strong for a weekly show since. All right, so we've got some fun stuff to talk about tonight. A couple quick bit of news when we talk into our Ashen News section, and then we're going to go into a discussion topic that may only be tangentially related to Intrepid, but I think it'll actually tie in. And it's been pretty much the hot button topic this week. I'm sure you can probably guess by the title of this show, Daybreaking News. That's right, we are going to dissect the Daybreak fiasco and what it may mean for Intrepid. All right, guys, let's go ahead and jump right into the Ashen News first. First off, Steven popped on the Discord, the official Discord, and posted a few things that I thought were pretty interesting. One of the first things that he showed us is, I'm going to pull it up here on the screen. He released some concept art of the Pyrean elves universities, which I didn't know the elves went to school for anything, because they're dirty, filthy elves.
Yeah.
Yes.
They may disagree.
Yes. It was actually really funny. I don't know if you noticed this or not, but I've been getting a lot of rebuttals from the elven population in Ashes of Creation. They've been typing elf on all the stuff I post. Yes, no. That's okay. I hate elves, and everyone knows it. That's how it goes. Anyway, we got the Pyrean University here. And it's pretty neat, because I like this, because this is something that I look at in terms of what I would call a style guide. These things right here is what I think they really need to do right throughout, throughout the entire game, which they're doing for the game itself. But when we talked about cosmetics in the past, that was something that we said they really should probably have a style guide to kind of go off of. This is one of those. You have your motif patterns that are something that are very intricate to the way things are designed. And this gives you an idea of where we're going. Now, the Pyrean elves, I think, are, what are they, more the wood elf kind of people, if I remember correctly?
I think so.
Because the Empyrean elves are the Noldor, are the high elves. The Altmer in Elder Scrolls are like the Noldor in Middle Earth, the more refined elves. And then the Wood Elves or the Sindarian Elves or the Pyrians here. So, I mean, you can kind of see when you're looking at this thing, it looks like we have a little bit of like leaf motif in that second line. Like you can see on the roof right there. It's kind of got that light mint green color. Even the some of the early concept art, they used a lot of what looked like to be birch trees. So a lot of white trees. Or if you're going into Middle Earth and Lord of the Rings lore, Malorn trees, because they had white and grayish bark. But anyway.
Yeah.
So
I guess it actually kind of caught me by surprise, only because you're right. They're supposed to be the nature elves, basically the wood elves, if you will, of the prancing elves. And it kind of surprised me that they had I guess I wasn't expecting a structure this advanced from them, if that makes any sense. I expected something up in trees or,
Yeah. No, I definitely agree with you. And I forgot to say this right off the top of my top of the show, but if you notice, every single one of us is rocking some swag right now. So now we're a real Ashes of Creation show.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't point that out at the beginning of the show. I'm curious how many people actually realized it, but there we go. We're all rocking swag. I know this is, yeah, you're right. From a university point of view, it is odd because you're right. All the concept that we've seen so far from these things have been very woodsy, right? So
Yeah, they've all got like leaves on them and like trees. They're part of trees in some way. This seems to be separated.
You're right. That is something I didn't notice before, that all the other ones were integrated into nature, kind of growing along with nature. This is the one that stands starkly apart. If it wasn't for the color scheme, I would have thought Empyrean.
Yeah, that's actually what I had thought as well, too. So when you said Pyrian, I was like, oh, that kind of took me aback, and I had to just double check that those were the nature ones that I had been seeing.
Right. What about you, Storms? I think you're muted, sir. The dreaded mute button always strikes.
How about now?
There you
Can
go.
you hear me now? All right. So I'm saying, and nobody's listening to me. This is the inside, right? I made the assumption that this is the inside. You don't see the integration because it's inside the trees. If you look toward the outside, when you start to get the curtains and the ropes, you start to get more fluid, and you can't see the outside from in here. So to me, my thought was, well, this is like internal to a tree, and the windows would be outside of the tree, but you can't see that because we're inside. That was my impression. Not
Gotcha.
I could be way off, but that was my assumption based on the fluidity outside. But then when you get inside, it's all structures and lines that don't exist in nature.
Gotcha.
Yeah, like I could see what you mean. The tower or the spire could very well have been a carved tree going up, and the other part was added afterwards.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. And it very well could be standalone as well, but you'll see, even if it is standalone, that they're bringing a lot of their motifs into it, such as the floor pattern, if you will. It's in the upper right-hand corner, the little mosaic. It's very Celtic, if you will, like the knotwork, the root knotwork that you see.
Mm-hmm.
And even on the bottom left, all of those are essentially tree branches and leaves. They're very fluid. They're very whimsical, and it tends to fit that type of style. What you would imagine from a wood elf type structure.
So I was also drawn to the planets and the sun, right? Because their representation of moons, right? Of the sun, of certain planets with rings, certain planets without. And the fact that the planets are rounding the sun make a different impression upon me than elves would have, I would thought.
Well, I think are you looking at the second one that they showed?
I might be.
Yes, I think you are. But that's okay. We're going to pull that up, too, because that was something else he showed. And this one, we don't really know if it's, per se, anything to do with the elves, other than what looks like an elven character there, but it was just a piece of concept art with a planetarium. Something that...
Yeah, I made the assumption they were related.
Oh, yeah, no, I don't think they're related. They may... Now... They may be.
Is that an elf?
It looks like it. Like
I think so. That was
you
my
see elves everywhere.
I know.
Behind every tree he sees an elf.
I'm a little paranoid. Yeah, there's elves everywhere. That's why we got to kill them all. They're everywhere. They're just anyway. No, well, just based on the way it looks, I would tend to think that would be more of an elven All right, let's roll that back. Elven from the perspective of what we've seen elves be thus far.
Gotcha.
From Lord of the Rings, for instance, from popular culture. Look at the way they're standing. Okay? Look at the sword. It's slightly curved. It's got a little wave to it. In popular culture, most of the curved blades, especially post Lord of the Rings and Steven Jackson, which, if you really go into the lore, I think that was actually something that was really funny because the Weta Workshop guys were like, they keep telling us to make these leaf-shaped blades and stuff like that, or these curved blades, but that's orc weapons. Anyway. Yeah, all the curved blades were supposed to be for the orcs, and I don't know how they kind of flipped around there. But anyway, in more popular culture, elves tend to have the more fluid scimitar or more Celtic-styled wavy type weapons. And like you see right there, that is not a straight sword. That kind of has a little bit of curve to it. And again, it could just be the concept art, so that's what I assume would be an elf. Something that I do want to point out, there are multiple planets that we see here, and one sun floating around here, showing the center of the universe, whatnot. I'm curious to see, like, and some of the planets have multiple moons. You notice that?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Rings around them, things of that nature. I'm curious what role other planets are actually going to play in the lore, if any.
And you notice that planets have different topography and representation of atmosphere.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I wonder. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I'm just wondering how far that takes them into their understanding of the universe. If they've gotten down to the fact that they're A, are the planets, B, of different types, and C, with different topography and atmosphere.
Or D, do we even know? Because here's the thing I really want to know. When we left Vera, right, is this remnants of what was left behind originally? Oh,
Could be.
How do they know what the planets look like here? Because no one alive, presumably, everyone who's going in, no one has been here for generations as far as we know. This isn't we walked away for summer vacation. From the way they described this, was when we left Vera, our ancestors, it was a huge amount of time. So generations would have passed. I was actually listening to another podcast today called History of Rome. I recommend you do it. They talked about the secular games, and secular not related to a type of religious event, but secular was a term they used to describe a period of time in which an entire generational gap would have elapsed. So whenever they were doing secular games, the idea was anyone who was seeing this game, no one would be alive by the time the next game came around, because an entire generation would have passed, which was roughly about 120 years. So the idea was anytime you could pick any random date, and any person from the youngest person to the oldest person would be gone. So how many generations have passed? We come back, we see all these planetary things. It's kind of almost reminds me similar to when you jump into the Elder Scrolls, and when you go into the Dwemer and they have their little observatories and stuff like that, trying to understand the different planets. Now, in that game, the planets are actually, well, we're not going to get into the metaphysics of that one. They actually represented more than just planets. But anyway, all right. Enough of the lore talk that we don't know anything about yet. So we're going to go ahead and move off of that. We have two little other bits of news that I wanted to mention first. There is an Alpha Zero test coming up this weekend, and that was based on the Twitter conversation that Steven was having. I'm assuming Steven, off of the Media AOC Twitter handle. So there will be an Alpha Zero test coming up this weekend, and that there will be emails going out for all testers. By the time you listen to this, the test probably already happened. So, sorry guys. There was one other bit of news I wanted to write down, and I lost it. Oh, crud. That's a shame. All right. Well, that's it. That's all for the news. All right, let's go ahead and jump into our discussion for today. And that is going to be the Daybreak fiasco. So let's set the stage first and foremost. So this is going to come all the way back to about April 24th. Okay, this is when this whole thing started. Well, actually goes all the way back to April 6th because the U.S. Department of Treasury started targeting several Russian oligarchs and started freezing their assets here in the United States due to them destabilizing, different things within the U.S. government, whether it be economy or whatever. We're not going to get into that because we really don't care. We're more curious about how this affects Ashes of Creation. So, one of the companies targeted was a Russian company called Renova, and this Renova supposedly owned Columbus Nova, which was a company that bought Daybreak Games or acquired Daybreak Games after it split from SOE way back in 2015, I think it was. So when this started happening, people started flooding the forums and going, is this going to affect our game, right? EverQuest, PlanetSide 2, H1Z1. What is one of their other titles? Oh, I can't remember right now, but a handful of other titles.
I mean, you got Lord of the Rings. You got
Standing Stone's in that too. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of stuff in there.
Dungeons and Dragons Online. That was right. That was the other one. Anyway, so this goes on, and Daybreak comes out and more or less goes, listen, we are at no point in time owned by Columbus Nova. Daybreak Games, and this is a quote from Daybreak. Daybreak Game Company has no affiliation with Columbus Nova. Jason Epstein, former member of Columbus Nova, is and has always been the primary owner and executive chairman of Daybreak Game Company, formerly Sony Online Entertainment, which he acquired from Sony in February 2015. Okay, so now this started to get the wheels rolling because people are scratching their head going, but wait, you guys have had 3 years of press releases, and former president of the company, John Smedley, went out on Twitter saying, we welcome our Columbus Nova overlords, more or less. You've released earnings statements with the title Columbus Nova, right? So they go back and forth, and they're more or less saying, no. It's just this guy who used to be a part of this. It still doesn't make a lot of sense. What things start getting hairier is when Daybreak starts going through all of their documentation. They took down the website page that said, Daybreak is now owned by Columbus Nova. That was scrapped. They started going through and editing all of their press releases and actually editing out the information that said anything to do with Columbus Nova. They even went so far as to try to edit the Wikipedia page to take out any reference of Columbus Nova, and that actually got shut down by Wikipedia guys. They're like, no, you can't change this. So they deleted all the 2015 press releases from their servers. They've updated all the Daybreak privacy policies to remove any mention of Columbus Nova. So this is all happening over the 26th and 27th of April. On the 27th of April, Daybreak pulls something else out of their hat, saying that Renova also doesn't own Columbus Nova. What? Anyway, all right. So that was on the 27th. Moving on, we got a piece just a little bit prior. I think this might have happened a little before this whole Columbus Nova mistake, and it may not even be related, but it's we're gonna say it because this is just even more fuel to the fire. A very high-ranking member of Daybreak Company, the chief publishing officer, Laura, I think it's Navier, it's a French word, I'm assuming, left the company. Okay? So she went out on Twitter saying she's moving on, next adventure awaits, I'll drop some info soon. Didn't really say much else, but it's actually kind of interesting that, you know, this very high-ranking member of Daybreak up and leaves. Okay? People are still going nuts. Within another day, I think it was like by this point in time, I think it was close to like the 28th or something like that, or 26th. So this is all happening over like a 3-day period. Daybreak announces that they are being hit with layoffs. This is massive because there's upwards, I guess, reports saying there's almost 40% of the Daybreak company was let go. I think it's almost 70, 80 people were let go from Daybreak Game Studios. And a couple really big names as well. So here we are. Daybreak now has confirmed the layoffs, giving the standard speech of, you know, we're realigning our workforce to better position our company. You know, that standard line before they fire you. And that's where we're currently sitting. So that's really sad for all the Daybreak people. Let's talk about this for a few minutes before we move on and tie it all together with Ashes. What do you guys feel from this entire story?
It just feels really weird and suspicious, man. Like, I get the overall reason why they think that it would potentially do it, but in this day and age, it's all just really strange. That's what I'm going to say to start.
Mm-hmm. You had some lawyer somewhere saying, erase it all.
But how?
Not knowing what that meant,
but
right?
How? Now,
they don't know. They're just saying do it.
Well, I understand this because one of the things they came up with saying was, I love this word. They came up and was saying it was a miscommunication.
Oh, yeah, that was a good one.
Okay. I work for a bank, as most people here know, and I'm very big into the audit side of things. I'm part of their IT department, and I also run their operations. And with that, IT is very integrated with our compliance because, of course, we run so many audits all the time. We are constantly going over documentation word for word to make sure everything's out there. How does a miscommunication like this get by your compliance for 3 years?
Oh, it was on purpose.
Oh, it totally was on purpose. But
that's the only way, right?
Yeah, there's no way you let this go for 3 years. Like, that makes no sense to me whatsoever that for 3 years you would and it was not just off press release. I can understand not going back and changing a press release. It's over and gone. But your terms of services are legal binding documents, and it's referencing a company that quote unquote doesn't own you? Is that not like really hairy, legal ground to be in? Like, in my mind, that's what I'm sitting there thinking. Like, you have your terms of services that we're signing off on, making references to a company that we assume owns you, but now you're saying doesn't. I really feel like from a legal perspective, that's going to cause all sorts of haywire. Is anything in... I've seen so much as legal documents be thrown out because they typed out the name with a middle initial, and because it wasn't signed with a middle initial, it was thrown out of court. Like, I've had notaries say, however it's typed on the paper is how you have to sign it. If it has a middle initial, you sign that middle initial. Because if it does not have that, people have thrown these out of court because of something as trivial as the signature name doesn't have a middle initial while the type name did. So I can't imagine that you would let something like this go for that long. And then to go and start trying to remove it, which you already know nothing can be removed off the internet. There's backups of backups. Google keeps backups of every web page in existence, it feels like. People are still pulling this out. every time that someone would post something, Daybreak would come in and take it down, and they're like, it's okay, I have backups, like they're posting imager links of things that they found, This is just crazy what's all going on. The other story that I heard was that the layoffs were known ahead of time, and it was just a crazy coincidence that this Columbus Nova stuff started happening at the same time that they were announcing layoffs.
So the layoffs were announced on
the 26th.
Which was the Friday, right? What's the 26th?
I believe so. What's that?
Yeah, that technically makes sense. If you're gonna have let a lot of people to go, you want to let them go on a Friday.
Well, it wasn't a Friday; it was a Thursday.
Oh well, then they just screwed that. That's okay.
Yeah, it was.
I don't that many layoffs. Those are planned ahead of time. You're not gonna wake up a day. Let's get rid of everybody. I think they were related to something, maybe timing coincidental.
Yeah, but the U.S. Department did this on April 6th, so they had 20 days to, that they knew that the U.S. Department of Treasury was starting to target these companies. So if they were in reality knew that, oh crud, Columbus Nova is going to have all of its assets frozen, we're not going to have any money coming in, you already know you're dead in the water. Right?
Unless you're not related to them. Technically, they're not.
Right.
Again, it's just a mishmash of what's going on. I think it's one of those things we're going to have to wait and then see as the bathwater drains, what it's going to get to. What's connected where.
I don't know. This whole thing, as you started digging into it, is just, it's such a mess about what is going on here. I don't know. I'm not a huge conspiracy theory person. I don't see the webs everywhere except for, with elves. Obviously, they're everywhere and they need to go. But this was almost just blatant when you start looking at the names and stuff like that. It's like, are you really? I don't know.
Yeah, there's also a lot of, like you said, big players like an EverQuest 2, which a lot of people, have done. They're big folks.
Oh yeah, definitely. And well, the other weird thing that I find it kind of funny that some of the teams that were hit kind of the hardest on this, H1Z1 just announced its PS4 port last year or last month or something like that, and now almost the entire team's let go.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, look at that. Their numbers trash too. They really.
Well, yeah, they can't compete with Fortnite and PUBG. Well, PUBG first, but now Fortnite just blew everything away in that battle royale style game or whatever. But they announced a PS4, port last month, and now the team's laid off. I don't see how this wasn't something that you couldn't see ahead of time, right? Except for the grenade that got thrown on April 6th when the U.S. Treasury Department goes, yeah, we're freezing assets. You know what I mean? Why would you announce a PS4 port and then lay off all the people who are doing the work?
Unless the plan was to do the port and then you just maintenance. Because once you do the work, it's actually, the maintenance team is much smaller than the actual development team.
Yeah, but do you think they could have done it in a month? Well, I mean, I guess it all depends on how far along on the port they were.
It depends, right? I mean, it depends how close they were. You know what? We're to the point where we know we're going to lose money. We need to do something. One of the things they're going to look at, what is the quick hit? A quick hit is to take the development team, and you're going to take it from probably 20% of its development to support.
Right.
If that.
Yeah. No, I agree. So that's interesting. Anyway. All right, so let's go ahead and tie this all in. Excuse me, to Ashes of Creation. Hold on, I feel another cough coming on. Sorry. I'm still fighting this. It's a mess. Anyway, so let me find it here. This story broke, I think, the day after the layoffs hit. the MMORPG.com wrote an article saying from one of their sources was that Daybreak has been claiming that they are currently in acquisition talks with a number of different studios. And this is where Ashes of Creation's company, Intrepid Studios, got thrown in as being one of the major contenders. Now, they reached out to Steven Sharif of Intrepid Studios for confirmation. And, you know, as per what you normally would expect, Steven was like, even if we were in talks, we couldn't say anything about it, you know. Let's talk a little bit about this. I'm curious how Intrepid actually got thrown into this. And from my point of view, I would imagine that Intrepid would be looking, because they are in the San Diego area, which is exactly where Daybreak is. So this would be a great opportunity for them to pick up some extra developers, because now there's upwards of 70, 80 people, you know, looking for a job, right? And Intrepid Studios does have some positions to fill. This might be a good opportunity. But do you guys feel like them acquiring Daybreak Studios is even worth it? Like, or would it cause more issues?
It depends what his long-term goal is. Here's you're getting a speculation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because let's back up a second. If Daybreak knew they were going to lay these people off, and they knew they were going to go into negotiations with acquisitions, right? Managing acquisitions, you're going to lay people off prior to those negotiations, so your valuation per how you'd measure it, not per member but per developer, would go up.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
The tricks you just do, right? Before you get into big acquisitions, that's what goes on. So that actually makes sense. Now, why Intrepid would look into it, personally, I would think he'd want to go in and cherry pick the right ones, not do an entire company pull-up.
Right. That would be my thought. Pick out a few of the good people that you want, because a lot of the people at work at Intrepid Studio, if you look at it, worked for Daybreak. I think Jeffrey Bard worked for Daybreak, if I remember correctly.
That's a great way to pull them together again. But to take on the entire portfolio, to me, that would be you're biting off a little more than you can probably chew at that point.
The other thing is, I mean, let's look at this from a business perspective here. So we have Steven, very wealthy gentleman. I don't know if his net value is enough to buy the company outright. Like, even if, like, it's said that he's funding this entire project, that it's 100% funded from mostly his own pocket, and then Kickstarter to add a few other little things in there. We know the cost that it takes to make an MMO. It's not a small amount. And obviously, depending on what all you do, I know some of the AAA studios, it's hundreds of millions of dollars. I doubt we're going to see that for this, because they're probably not going to go out there and get, you know, the actors and stuff, the voice actors to, you know, voice act a bunch of stuff like they did for, like, ESO, for instance. They told us how much it cost to make that. But they also had these, you know, A-list actors doing all the voice acting. That probably cost them a good bit by itself. You know, there's a lot of things going into this, so we can, you know, kind of take that out. I don't think his net worth is high enough to be able to buy Daybreak. And why would you want to anyway? Most of their games were not doing very good. We already know H1Z1 was in the crapper.
Well, then you give him a fire sale, right? You know they're not doing good, but I don't think he would need to fund it all. That's when he goes out to those around him and get the right capital pulled together to do such a deal. But I believe, in thinking this a little bit into unreality, isn't one of the saying, you know, go big or go home. If this would be a go big move, I don't think he'll do it, but this could be a big go big move.
Well,
I mean, I don't know.
I'm kind of wondering. So, Intrepid has people who worked at Daybreak, correct?
Yes.
And if they have a bunch of people who worked at Daybreak, it kind of stands to reason that the people who work at Daybreak know what Daybreak consists of, as far as the, you know, the validity of the people who are they actually good coders? Are they actually good workers or not? And they also probably have an insight over what they own as well, too. So it could be, you know, I'm not sure hardware, software-wise, or outside of IP, what they actually own that would be worth acquiring, that might be worth acquiring outside of the people, you know.
Right. The people I can absolutely see. And I honestly think that the idea of acquisition, if we're going to bring this back to reality, I think it would be dumb to buy Daybreak. Especially when you're still working on your own MMO. Like, what do you care about these other properties? Whatever. Work on your own MMO. Grabbing the people is great. The other thing, let's go ahead and roll this in there. If you were getting it only for the IPs, I know some people have thrown up here, and I'm one of, you know, EverQuest is one of those. I could care less about H1Z1. It means nothing to me. Planet Side means nothing to me. Now the two, well, I'd say Lord of the Rings would be pretty interesting, but that's actually Standing Stone, not even Daybreak, and DCUO is also, Dungeon DDO. DDO are two separate. They're probably not even part of this, but EverQuest is a big franchise. But given Steven's statement for pay to win and whatnot, if that was the mantra he's kind of going with, I almost feel like he would have to go back, even if he acquired this and wanted to keep the games running, in order to not feel like a sellout, you'd have to go back and redo the monetization on almost every single one of the games. Now, I haven't played EverQuest 1 or 2 yet, you know, or at least not in a very long time. I'm not sure what they are, but I can tell you right now, H1Z1, lock boxes all over the place, lock boxes that give gear, that give, like it's very pay to win in that regard. I'm not sure about Planet Side. I feel like there's boost and things you have on there. A lot of the stuff they have on their running store wouldn't really fit with what he's going for Ashes. Don't you feel like that would more negatively impact the company going, oh, they're claiming no pay to win, but look at the other games they run? You know?
Yeah, I mean, it does seem outlandish that he would, but I think for a lot of reasons, included those, that it's just not the right time, but I definitely think he'd be smart to pick some people up.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Okay.
So, just to add on to that, EQ2 is definitely pay to win.
Oh, really?
Yeah. They basically allow you to buy a potency buff that makes you 15% stronger, I think it was.
Oh, well, yeah, definitely.
And then, like, spell upgrades, blah, 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 and all this stuff, yeah.
Okay. Definitely pay to win at that point. In which case, yeah, that goes completely flies in the face of everything else that they would run. So it's like you would acquire Daybreak to get the IPs, but if you wanted it to fit into the mantra of your company, you would then have to go and change everything that these games currently are set up. Like, you pretty much have to take them offline to redo the monetization. I feel like that would kind of negate all your profits, because by all the time you're offline, you are not earning money off of those titles.
True.
And even if you were to buy them, are these titles popular enough to even recoup your investment, much less make a profit? H1Z1, I would have my doubts. Maybe EverQuest 2, but I don't even really hear that much in the news.
Unless you're going to pick him up and dismantle, but I don't think he would do that either.
You mean...
If you pick him up and dismantle...
You mean pick up... Oh, so you acquire the IPs and then sell them off piecemeal?
Yeah.
You know? That's not something that I thought about, but I mean... Yeah. I'm assuming some company will probably end up doing that because, you know, the EverQuest name is a big name. Now...
It is.
The only other thing is they kind of hurt their own name when they killed EQ Next, and then the whole landmark thing that went down. That tended to hurt the brand more than I think it helped it. So right now it's more of a nostalgia feeling than anything. I do not see the...
But is that what he's going for with the let's make MMOs great again, right? Other than the monetization part, is it that old style MMO that he wants to bring back?
No, I definitely wouldn't think so. I mean, other than certain things that I'm trying to think of the thought I have here, and it just doesn't seem to fit. Like, yeah, these older MMOs, yeah, honestly, I think they were better before they went free to play, right? Like, they were something that was special back in the day. They really were. And I think there might be value in having those things. But the other thing to take into effect is, unless you were planning on maintenance moding them, and from what I hear, EQ1 and EQ2 have expansions on their, well, they did have expansions on their way out, you know? So if you acquired them, you wouldn't maintenance mode them. You would actually be splitting your development, or at least your income, right? Let's assume all the Intrepid people stay Intrepid, right? You acquired Daybreak and whatever developers they have, and you're going to keep them on this project to keep EverQuest 1, 2, PlanetSide, whatever, running. They're developing their own stuff. You now have 2 drains on your capital, right? You have the Daybreak wing that it's still building. Now, they are bringing in money, per se, because people are playing. They are doing their thing. And if you kept the stores running without, removing all the pay-to-win aspects, or even if you did, you'd have those stores running. I don't know what their income is, et cetera, but by laying off so many people, do you even have enough staff? Would you have to dedicate more staff to finish those projects? But even taking that into account, you're still now having 2 drains on your capital. You're having to pay your developers to develop the MMO that you want, your vision, Ashes of Creation. But now you're also having to take some of that money and pay the developers who are keeping EQ1, EQ2, and all these other games running. And
unless because they're self-funding, right? Because you just walked off a whole bunch of people. They're now at the point that they're self-funding. You have them set up as a subsidiary. Don't necessarily bring them into Intrepid. Keep them as an intact whole doing that, right? And then you start looking at what else is he getting when he buys those pieces. Is he getting, if they're working on background stuff, if they needed something that they have, that they figured, you know what, that might be a better way, quicker way to do it, would be to buy it as opposed to write it. Again, I don't know. We're speculating what possible reason it could be to do such a crazy move, but there are reasons.
Right. Any other comments, Alpha, before we, jump off of here?
Another cliff.
No. No, I'm good.
Okay, cool. All right, I'm trying to see if we have anything in here from our mailbag. I think we do. Yeah, we're going to go into our mailbag to finish off this show, and we're going to answer one of these questions from Happy Hansel. I'm going to see if I can read this one. It says, could you discuss guild versus guild war and city versus city war strategies in general, or how to run a PvP guild, a trade guild, or a social guild, or a nomadic PvE guild, etc. in Vera? Will the social functions, thieves guild, religious guild, etc., different city types, and PvP versus PvE content pull a generalist guild apart, or will the strongest guild need all types of players? What types of specialized guilds might thrive? Okay, let's kind of handle that. Let's see, guild versus guild. We can't. Let's ignore that one for now, because we kind of talked about that with the castle sieges. We know that's going to be the guild versus guild aspect. I mean, outside of declaring war from a guild, which then just, marking another guild as kill on sight, which you could do. And city versus city war strategies. I honestly think, after discussing with Steven the castle siege mechanics, I really do feel like cities are not going to be a focus. When a city gets sieged, it's due to a number of guilds going, we want to advance the world in a different direction. Because the way they described it is city leadership, it will be hard for a guild to control a city, per se, because there's many different ways of controlling a city. There's not really a guaranteed way that you can make sure that your guild gets in every election cycle, et cetera, et cetera. So city changes, I from a political point, are going to be very fluid, kind of like U.S. politics. You know, you never really know who's going to win at any given time. So I don't know if guilds and whatnot are going to be, but whenever a city goes under siege, I really do feel like what's going to happen is the people who have citizenship in that node, have stakes in that node, have houses in that node, are going to defend it, and the rest of the server who wants to see change are going to attack it. That's how it's going to be. You know, like, I'll tell you right now, if a city goes under siege and I have no investment in it, I'm going as an attacker just to see what's going to happen, you know?
Yeah, why not?
I think the distance might stop that, right, in between cities, if they're that far. But, and again, I haven't really heard the Siege podcast yet, but the complexity of what Stephen was walking through during our interview of that keep siege or the castle siege. Can you imagine the complexity in a city siege if they follow that same pattern? I mean, he took it was like a 5-minute, you know, this is what we would do to a siege, and you have all these steps and layers and steps and layers. If they follow that pattern for a city, it would just be huge, which it should be. So I'm very interested to see what that would, if they're going to follow that same pattern.
Right. And like Steven already said, if a metropolis ever gets sieged, pretty much just expect an entire server to be there. Like, that's not something that you make the distance travel for a hit.
Because you do know days ahead of time, right?
Yeah.
Notification.
Oh, yeah.
So you would start, let's pack it up. Let's go.
Oh, yeah, we're going.
Let's take the whole guild. We're going.
We're going. All right, but let's go into here. Will social factions, different city types, PvP versus PvP content pull a generalist guild apart? Because I actually think that is an interesting concept, because Hands of Fate, if I were to say what we are, I would almost say a generalist guild. Wouldn't you? Because we kind of do a little bit of everything. I mean, we have our PvE raiders. There's a lot of us into PvP, but I wouldn't say that we're only one thing.
I would agree.
And a lot of guilds aren't that way, but I think more, if you looked at almost every guild that's out there right now, there's very few that we're just PvP or we're just PvE. There are ones out there, but generally most of them fall into a type of PvX category. I think Hands of Fate is probably almost more towards a very, like, almost dead center in the generalist. Like, we don't kind of swing one way or the other, because we have a lot of people who do a lot of stuff. We're a pretty big community overall. You know, if you're part of our Discord, you'll see we have a lot of members. We have a very large community. Do you think the aspects of the game will pull it apart, and will the Strongest Guild need all types of players? What are your guys' thoughts?
I generally think that, based on what we've heard, it's more, you don't need all of the players, but depending on what you're trying to do, you may have to find out and figure out ways around some things that you need, you know, in order to make things work. Whether it be if you need a specific material, somebody with specific skills, more people, you know, to get and do what you want to do. There seems to be a lot of facets that you could go it alone, or you could and have everyone and just have a massive guild, or you could have find different ways to get what you want.
Right. Storms, what about you?
So I think it's going to bring in a lot of everybody eventually. I think at first it's going to bring in a lot of PvP focused, but based on the understanding of what how they're being set up as safety zones and such, I think people will realize that there's more to it than that, and bring it forward so that the general skill that we have will rebuild itself and stay that way, not just a PvP focus.
Mm-hmm. And I actually honestly think the pure PvP guilds may jump into this. Now, some of them may stay, excuse me, after going for so long, my throat's really starting to get raw. You can hear it now, so I apologize for people listening. So I'll try to make this short. Some of the PvP guilds are going to stay. I think a lot of them are going to leave. The reason why I say that is because even these castle sieges are on a weekly timer per se. Like, I think there'll be stuff to do. I don't know if there'll be enough for people to do all the time. I know people have said about arenas and stuff like that, but I believe it was it our interview where Steven confirmed, I'm almost positive it was ours, but maybe it was another one, where he was saying that he wasn't looking at doing any type of instance PvP with the exception of the castle sieges. I don't think we're going to see battlegrounds like you see in other games, like a 10v10, 10, whatever. I really don't. I may be wrong, and I would, if you have evidence of this to the contrary, please put it in the notes or leave a comment, and I will gladly eat my shoe. But I don't think we're going to see like the arena systems of 3v3s and things like that. The ones we saw for PAX, I think were literally just set up to show off PvP. I don't think we're going to see that in game. So, man, with that being said, a generalist guild, the thing that really does help is the fact that there's only one guild per character. This is not a multi-gaming guild. We've seen that happen with our ESO guild because we were very much a generalist guild in there too. We did a little bit of everything. But eventually, because you were allowed to have multiple guilds, what would happen was people would start getting into, what do I want to do as a character? Oh, I want to do hardcore trials. Well, our guild doesn't really do that. Or we do it so infrequently that it's not enough for you. So what did they do? They found a guild that would do that. And that's where you start seeing the breaking up of generalist guilds. I think with this type of game, you may have that to an extent. But given the way they're setting up, the way Steven had mentioned about raids and stuff, that he doesn't want it to be you log in on a Monday for reset and you're doing raids. You know, he doesn't want to see that kind of thing. I think it's going to be more of a living world. I think generalist guilds in general will have more of a hold on their players because, A, you want to have that sense of community. Oh, my goodness, my voice. You want to have that sense of community, and there's going to be a little bit of flaking off when someone goes, I want to do something else. I want to be in that guild that only does castle sieges 24/7. So they may find a guild that does that and just that, you know. But I think those types of guilds may become few and far between, just due to how PvP's set up, or leaving for one of the more PvP focused MMOs like Camelot Unchained or Crowfall. Okay, I'm gonna stop talking.
So I agree, actually, with that whole premise that the Generous Guild will do better in a game like this, especially because you will have those times where those who are PvE focused want to go out into the world, and they're like, well, I don't know if we want to do this by ourselves. Maybe we'll have the PvP faction of the guild have a run every couple days that we'll go to those spots and we'll take the farmers and we'll have them farm while we guard them. Again, I think they're going to work together because of the way it's set up.
Agreed. And almost everyone needs crafters, you know, to build stuff. Yeah, I think that even the strongest guilds will need all types of players. Even those who do pure PvP, I think what they're going to start doing is you're going to start seeing a breakdown of the guild's not going to be so much focused. Even if they start out all PvP, I think they might start opening up the back end a little bit and start sliding out. Even if their main wedge still stays in PvP, they'll start sliding slowly into the generalist category. Maybe just with a little bit
crafters.
Yeah. And that's kind of how I see these things, you know, pulling together.
Gotcha.
All right. So before my voice completely goes, I think this is where we're going to end the show for today. So thank you so much, Happy, for that email. And we do have a bunch of other ones. If you're interested in sending us a mail, head on over to dungeoncrawlernetwork.com. There's a contact us page. Just leave us a message. We still have a few more mails to go through, and then we'll be all up to date. So we are working our way through those as we get the news. So, Stormzlord, where can people find you?
Well, they can find me at Stormzlord at Twitter. They can also find me at Stormzlord at digitalpiperstudios.com, where we're like 2 weeks away from releasing our first game. So we're getting there.
Excellent, excellent. And Alpha Soul.
Hi, you guys can find me at YouTube at youtube.com/Drakdoc. Also in the Hands of Fate chat on Discord. I frequent there.
There you go.
You type there more than anybody else. I can't. You're always out. Like I'm working. Wonder what's going on. Alpha's doing something.
Yep, definitely.
Got it on my mobile app.
Yeah, me too. That's what I do. People are actually responding, wow, you respond so quickly to messages like YouTube comments. I'm like, yeah, well, that's what happens when you get notifications on your phone. So, yeah. Anyway, you can follow me at Aggelos, AGGELOS_WF on Twitter. And, of course, our community Discord, which you can find the link to that on our website, dungeoncrawlernetwork.com. There's a link that says join Discord. Just go ahead there, click that, and you'll be part of our Discord, or in the description below. Both on YouTube, Twitch, iTunes, all that fun stuff. So everything we do, dungeoncrawlernetwork.com, that has links to all of our social media, Facebook page, Twitter accounts, YouTube, Twitch. Check all that out. Give us a follow. And, of course, I do encourage you to leave us a review on iTunes. I know people hate iTunes, but almost everything podcast-related is based off iTunes. Sorry, it's just the way it works. They pioneered the whole podcast movement, and almost every other company pretty much just builds off of that for their ratings. So more iTunes reviews helps people know that we are a real podcast, that we say real words, and sometimes it means things. So check that out. Thank you so much, guys. We hope you enjoyed this episode of From the Ashes, and we will see you next time. See you later, everybody.